and then make this the official beginning of the 14th Knowledge Seekers Workshop. And we've made it through the 13th Knowledge Seekers Workshop. That was a chore, although we haven't edited it yet, so we can't quite say we made it through. Boy, I'd never had so much trouble with a broadcast in all the workshops, all 24 of them. So I don't know what it was about the 13th, but it sure brought to fruition the premonition that Mr. Kesh mentioned that 13 was going to be a rough one, and maybe we should skip floor 13 as they do in elevators and so on. But anyway, we made it through, and here we are at the 14th.
Tomorrow is the Friday the 13th too.
Wow, well that's another whole thing to look forward to. So, anyways, I'll I guess hand things over to you guys at the Spaceship Institute there, Mr. Kesh, and who's left there now at the Spaceship Institute? There's not too many people there right now, are there? Three or four.
Marco, for a change, Armand's here. When we start, we got Ivan and John, and this is the permanent, what do you call it, members. And the others who've been with us, they moved back home or their own ways. We are busy with doing, as we promised, a lot of things, and busy with setting up the new institute. There's a lot of things happening, legal, what do you call it, matters regarding takeover of the premises and getting the licenses for appropriate use as an educational center. You're going to clip your finger very soon. Hospital is very near. Armand is playing with magnets. We have we will most probably issuing the new knowledge seekers invitations within the next week or so for the new set of knowledge seekers. I've seen a lot of requests in the backgrounds, but we're trying to bring into Keshe Foundation a number of Italian scientists, because we are in Italy and we have none. So most probably we'll have a permanent Italian member on the Keshe Foundation very soon. I give the headphone to Armand to tell us, because he's been here, and Marco, the only one full time since last time we spoke. His eyes has jumped up. He's laughing. Now he's going to tell you what he's done in the past week. All the mischiefs he's been up to. He's the mischievous guy in this place. So whatever you want to know gone wrong or goes wrong, Armand has some say in it, or he has his finger in it. I'll pass on.
Hello guys. Good morning.
Morning, Armin.
Hi, Armin.
So there's so many things is going on in here that really I have to recollect my mind, because I just woke up and no coffee yet.
Do you want me to look in my backyard for it?
No, thank you. I'm gonna post some actually pictures. 1 minute. That I prepared
Are
last
these
night.
pictures on Google Drive?
Google Drive?
Yeah, is that where you're going to post the pictures to?
No, I'm just gonna post it in Skype.
Okay. So in that case, can we just ask that everybody doesn't just download it right off the bat? If we could have you guys, most of the group, just wait until Rick and I both have it, so that we can show it in GoToMeeting. This is for the rest of the guys in the GoToMeeting and the Skype, just so that we can not limit your bandwidth so much when it's downloading.
Okay, I'm not gonna post some videos. I'm just gonna put some pictures that of the combination of.
You've got to explain. A lot of people don't see it.
No, I'm just posted it.
No, but the majority don't see it.
The majority don't see it. So I actually posted in a Facebook. If you go to the Facebook, I shared it with everybody yesterday night, late.
You're talking about the GANs?
Are you talking about the GANs
No,
picture?
I'm talking about the combination of setup of the reactors that we have on the
Okay.
floor.
Okay, I've got that here.
Yeah,
It's
where is
I
it?
got it
When I share
here.
it, goes
There, it's
no. It's my Facebook. Actually. I cannot share it with the Spaceship Institute. I don't know why.
okay. I've got it up on the live stream now here, Armin, and
I need access.
if you can tell me which picture you're referring to, then I can bring each one up individually.
The last, actually, the post, Rick, you can see it. You know, yesterday night it was like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. I don't know.
9 hours ago, according to live stream.
Yeah.
So you didn't get much sleep, obviously.
And actually, no,
So-
not every day.
So what I see is there's 2 pictures with some kind of data screens on them, and then there's
Yes.
1, 2, 3. I think there's actually 4 of the. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 different reactor pictures. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
That's the
So
combination that we have on the floor now.
okay. So what we can do is show them in the live stream, and if can you discuss or talk about each one, or what would you
Yes,
like
definitely.
to?
That's what I'm gonna
great.
do. A minute, let me open it.
Okay.
My
I'll try
connection
to get
is
it
down.
set up a little better here so people can see it a little better. Okay, let me get rid of the live stream thing.
Okay. Is it ready, Rick? When it's ready, just let me know that I can continue.
Yeah, I just want to. I just have to go to Livestream Studio for a second here and correct the thing on the screen so it doesn't interfere with people watching. There we go. That should be better. Turn that off. That off. Okay, now. Holy cow, new pictures. These are more pictures coming through.
Yes, yes,
No.
yes.
Now they're all coming through. Okay, that's good. They're
Okay.
nice, clear pictures at least, so that's a good thing.
You know, pictures is only for, showing the setup. An explanation is, there's 2 pictures that we can, where we
Okay.
monitor actually the magnetic and gravitational fields.
Right?
If you can see, there are 2 sensors, and we're almost
Okay,
running
wait a minute.
these
Which
reactors.
picture are you referring to? 2 sensors on the 2121, that JPEG?
Yes, correct.
2121 or 2116?
Actually, let me know. Where is it?
2116 shows the actual units that do the power supply and the hookup.
Yes, but if you go on a Facebook, you can see. Rick, can you go to the Facebook on my Facebook, please?
Yes.
Because that's where all the pictures actually.
Let me just get it here. What's that?
So it's an overlay thing.
Right. Okay.
We've already
Okay,
got
yeah,
21.
just Just a second there. I have to get situated here.
What's this picture?
Where did it go? Get rid of this here. Oh, I know what happened. Okay.
Ah, here. Aha, I found it. Finally.
Okay. And we're looking at the, whoops, wrong one. Sorry.
Ah, link. I don't want to link. Sorry.
Oh, it's a confusing world. There we are, I think.
No, it's not doing it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I've got your timeline up here on Facebook. Let's see if we can get that zeroed in here with our screen. And
It's not doing.
okay, so which picture of your album? You've got 6 photos in your album.
Yeah. Here one. Here I got it, Rick.
I mean, I can show whichever picture you like here.
That's it. Finally, we got it sorted.
So Rick, just grab the 2 that he just sent on Skype, so we can make sure we're talking about the same pictures.
Yeah, I've got those ones lined up as well, but he mentioned the ones in the in his Facebook. So.
Last two pictures. I posted it. You know, it's monitors that we monitor 2 reactors, 2 separate reactors. One, it's a middle reactor, and the other one is Marcos reactor, the steel reactor that, you know, the ball. It's 1 core reactors. So we almost month and a half, 2 months, we are running these reactors on non-stop and slowly feeding all the gases proper proportions actually to create a plasma, which we did. And we can see that first time, you know, we reached to 3.014, and actually Marco was very happy with our results because we can have it's only me and him was over here, and you know, every day is doing the same thing, just slowly feeding hydrogen and trying to understand how we can create magnetic fields and gravitational fields.
So that is 3 Gauss, it looks like, on the gauge there. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
3.014.
That's the middle
I got
reactor.
it. Yeah, the middle reactor. The that's the 2 core reactor. Is that correct?
It's 3 core reactor.
3 core. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So.
And the measurements taken outside it?
Yes.
And is that by that little black rod-like device that's being held by close to the sphere?
Correct.
That's your magnetic sensor, right? Your
yes.
The actual sensor. Okay. So I'll zero that in on that in this picture. I bet we can see it better for the live stream, folks. Let's see if we can have a good look at that little black sensor thing in the middle of the screen there. That would be the magnetic sensor for the apparatus that records the magnetic field.
That's correct. Well, what we see right now, it's every day is gradually is going up. When we reach, as Mr. Cash said, around 5, 6, then we will see actually balance between all the reactors. When we reach that, then we can reach lift or any other position that we want to take with the reactors, because then all the reactors are going to be in balance. Might be one of them is going to fly away, but we're going to catch it if we can. So this is what's going on.
Does that include the reactor
like,
of you, Armin?
What is it?
I said, does that include the reactor of you? Somebody going to catch you when you fly away?
Yes, yes. Marco gonna catch me. Then if Marco flies away, John gonna catch me. So we're all a team. So
You're just not saying anything. Your wife did catch you a while ago.
yeah, we're not 11. Otherwise, I would say a football team. So this is what we do, all day, trying to understand the magnetic and gravitational field, how they interact with each other. And finally, we can see that slowly we can build up plasma, and it's like visually appearing in front of our eyes and in our understanding that truly, it's amazing feeling. Sometimes you sit down and give all your fields to the reactor, and you can see even monitor it. Sometimes it jumps when you give it, or you can take it fields from the reactor. It depends what kind of mold you are. So it's a detectable now and understandable. Slowly we can understand it because it's a kind of new for us. If you have any questions, please, you can ask me and I can answer it.
Armin, can you help the folks at home? Let me just get my connections straightened out here a bit. Can you hear me okay, Armin?
What is it? What is it? I'm sorry.
I'd like to clarify which reactor is which in terms of there was a thing of identifying reactors with letter names like A, B, C, D, E. Do you still do that? Is that an appropriate way to identify them?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, then.
A is John's reactor.
That would be in the image, in image 2121, which we have up on the live stream now. That'd be the ceramic reactor on the left-hand side of the picture, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, yes, that's John's reactor, and that's a reactor. Which letter was that? Does it have a letter?
A.
Not J? A.
No, A. There is no J.
Yeah, you'd think there'd be with J.
A is an Armin.
Yeah, Armin should be A. Anyways, okay, so that we'll call that's reactor A, which is...
No names, please.
Right, reactor A is the ceramic reactor that John tends to work on, let's say. Okay, then we can move on to the one in the center, which I'll zero in on with the live stream a bit here. And that's the...
I think B is mine and Marek's reactor.
That's the one in the center that we see? Okay, that's the white one.
No.
That's a different one.
Yeah, that's the white one.
Okay, what
Behind
about
the center? He's hiding.
Oh, I see that center. Let me see if I can get a different picture up on it.
Yeah, that's what I said.
There is a better picture. There's a picture of it there in the image 2122 on the right hand side. Is that correct?
Let me see, 2122. Now let me see which one I posted for you. 2122. Yeah.
And just by looking at these pictures, Armin, it looks to me like the John's reactor's on the same level as the inside reactor, and your guys is a little bit lower. Is that right, or are they all on the same level?
No, we are all on the same, level. But John's reactor, it's upside down now,
Upside down?
Yeah, it's a little bit high, Vince. We put support, and we put upside down because Jan's reactor is like absorbing all the fields, like taking all the fields. We're feeding Jan reactor all these 3 reactors because he's hungry.
Yeah. So you put them down so you could have the infinity loop kind of thing. So the north will go to the south, and the south goes to the north of the
Yes,
center.
correct. What is it? What is it? I couldn't understand. What can you repeat your question?
So the exit of the center goes to the enter of John's reactor on the bottom, and the top of John's reactor goes to the enter of the center reactor.
Yes. We change.
Did it change the polarity?
No, it didn't. It didn't change the polarity. We changed the polarity actually when we turned it upside down because it was rotating, clockwise.
Oh, so yeah, it's rotating the other way now, isn't it?
1 minute. Let me mark it.
I hear Mr. Kesh in the background going, no.
You ask questions in the morning,
I'm asking a nice question. I didn't think it was that hard.
Okay, I will try to explain. Last week, I think it was on Friday, we did some testings with these reactors. We did measurements in different positions of the reactors. First, we laid them down on the floor. They were just laying and pointing. So if we look at each reactor, if we say that there is south pole at like entry of the reactor is in the bottom, and exit of the fields is in the top of the reactor, and we position the reactors in the way that they will follow entry exit, and then the last reactors was pointed like exit toward the middle, to the center reactor. And we measured fields at our magnetic field detector and observed changes of the fields. And with this observation, we noticed that fields are actually changing. So we tried to position reactors in different way, and one of the position was also that we turned John's reactors upside down. So the bottom is now pointing upwards, and when we change this position, we observed in the field detector that fields increased. So our conclusion was that exiting John's reactors was on the other side than the other reactors. So yeah.
Okay, so you mean the exit of John's reactor is now on the top, the exit?
Yes.
Okay. Is it spinning the same direction as everybody else? Like, do you have the motor in reverse, or is it spinning the opposite?
Now it's the direction of rotation of the motor is the same. Yeah, it has been reverted. First, it was turning clockwise, but now we reverted the motor and it turns anti-clockwise. And we also, when we changed this direction of rotation, we also observed the increasing of the fields. I have to look at our data because it's so many data that sometimes I forgot everything. But as I remember,
or your eyes go buggy.
Yeah, you know, there were maybe 200 measurements or 300 measurements done in last week and this week, so it's very difficult to remember everything. But it's written on our sheets, on our sheets paper, so that we can go back and see what was the reading when we put some special feeding of the gases. Actually, what we did whenever we put different amount of the gases into the reactors, we measured the fields at each change. So every change that we did, we put down the measurement results so that we know what how different loadings impact the fields of the plasma in the reactors. So what you are seeing and at the pictures, you are seeing physicality of our chambers, of our reactors. But what is more important is what is inside. We are trying to create plasma inside, and we are trying to understand the interaction of plasma between each others. We are trying to move away from physicality of reactors and trying to understand the interaction of plasmas. And with loadings of hydrogen, we tried to convert hydrogen to plasma in the reactors, and with this conversion we are changing field strength and try to increase our plasma. This is very slow procedure. It's time consuming, but we have to be patient. Put drop by drop, very small amount of hydrogen, and try to convert this hydrogen to plasma. We also have put some layers of other gases, and we are trying to observe how this layering influence to the converting process. Let's say how layers influence to ionization of hydrogen, and whenever we change loading, we put down our measurement results. So as I said, so that we know what each combination of gases gives us as a result. So that's what we are doing.
How long approximately are you waiting when putting in the gases to wait for plasma to be created? I understand that it requires patience because it's not going to be done instantaneously, as most of us would like. But how long are you guys allowing for the transmutation to occur?
Well, there were different timings. At the beginning of the week or last week, we did this quite often. Every 1 hour, yeah, every half hour even. But now we are feeding twice a day, 3 times a day maximum. So.
But you guys already have a plasma inside, right? That you're aware of. So you're just building on the plasma, is what you're saying. You're building it up very slowly. Yeah. You tried to do it fast at first, but that you just weren't getting what you wanted, and you figured out that by building it slower, then you get more fields. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we are trying to build up our plasma. So in a way, in a last workshop, what was explained, we can create different elements in our reactors. We are not limited to number of elements of Mendello, but we are trying like creating a star, and each star is entity on its own. It's different plasma. How can I say? It's like depends how much quantity. What's the mass of that plasma inside? It's what we said. It's a quantity and entity. Let's say in the
entity being the strength and the quantity being the quantity, right?
Well, strength. That's you have always the same strength. Let's say of the principal matter, of principal fields inside the plasma. It's always the same strength. But when you put more of this field strength together, you increase that plasma. And when you put them a lot of them together, like let's say, then you've got a sun.
Right, and that's why our sun is bigger than our planet.
That's
the center sun of the galaxy is bigger than our
yes.
sun.
So this quantity dictates the position or the interaction with other plasma around it.
But it can be a forced interaction, or it could be a natural interaction, right? And natural interaction as in the solar system, and a forced interaction in terms of a reactor produce the same results, right?
Yeah, we are trying to build this plasma inside of our reactors. Let's say in the sun, it needs millions of years to create that conditions to build that plasma. And with understanding of what we are doing here, we are trying to speed up this process, and with our feedings and conditions that we are creating inside the reactors, we are trying to build the plasma. Now we are using nano layers in the reactor, and different layers of gases to create that condition. But there is also other possibility to use nuclear material, or there could be also some other procedure. We are trying in this way, and it is slow way.
Yes, but the turtle still can finish the race, right? The tortoise can beat the hare sometimes.
Sorry, sir. Oh, yeah.
It's the story of the tortoise and the hare.
Yeah. Well, we are learning here actually, and we are trying to understand this. And once we achieve this, because now let's say this plasma is limited and it shows limited influence on the environment that we are used to observe. We need something physical to observe. Our senses are not, how can I say, developed enough to. We are not aware of this force that is ruling everything in the background, and we are only observing physicality around us, but there is in the background there is other force that rules that physicality, and at the moment we are not aware of this. So there are interactions for sure, but at the moment we are trying to make some physical out of this, like moving of our reactors. Then that's the way we know that we are on the right way. But we can observe the changes of the fields in our field detector, and what I can say now is that whatever we do, if we put some small amount of gases in, it influences field detector, and it's just small amount of gases, but there is influence. And
what about the radio? Is it still playing?
Well, radio, it was very strange this week. Yeah, it was singing, but at the moment on Monday, it went down, so it was off at some moment. Then it came up, then it went down also. So is this could be influence of the fields of the plasma? I cannot say at the moment. It could be also something else, something with the receiver. Also, Armen did change the position of the radio, and then I think one day you touched, you moved it, yes. Yeah, it's one of the problem here is we really have to be patient, and if there is no results, we try to change things too quickly. We are not patient enough to see results, and sometimes we did changes too quickly, and then after a while, Mr. Cash came into the lab, and he said, "Why did you change things? You have to be patient. You have to wait and wait to."
I guess plasma you do it when Mr. Cash is not there.
It happens every time.
Yeah, well, he's doing his own things, his own research, and he's not all the time in the lab with us. And when we are alone, we are trying to do things on our own to change things, yes. And as I said, sometimes we are not patient enough, and sometimes we press some buttons when we should not press them, and
And have you been
increase
watching the clouds? Monitoring?
Sorry?
Have you been monitoring the clouds?
Oh, in last week we have very nice weather here. It's just blue sky, nothing else. I think today it's a little bit more windy with some clouds, but in the past week there were not many clouds. We didn't observe any changes at the clouds. No.
Sounds like a nice place to be.
If you want to cook here.
Yeah, but it's also hot here last week. So, any question, or I will pass the microphone to others, or Mr. Cash.
I have a question.
Yes.
My question was, how about the interaction between the reactors? Sorry, my name is Nicholas. I guess I'm new here. I just want to ask, how about the interaction of the reactor with you guys? Have you tried to, let's say, have several people connected to each reactor and attempting to do what you're trying to achieve mentally from the mental position? So let's say each reactor will have one person, and all of you three together will somehow try to, let's say, influence the fields of the reactor to behave in the way that you want?
We did some tests, but what you're explaining, maybe it's too early for us. We did test the last week. We were sitting in front of the reactors and tried to give energy or to take energy from the reactor. Mr. Cash was observing the field detector, and there were changes in the field detector. When we were taking energy, it was the same for both of us, for me and Arman, I think. And when we were giving, there was some change. I don't know for me what it was. I observed when Arman was near the reactor, and there was increase. It was from 0.72 to 0.74 or something. So that's what we try to, we try to mentally control our reactors. But as I said, this is just first step. We are just learning, and maybe it's too soon for that. We are here a few months, and I think the program was that first year we are only learning, and in the second year and in the end of the second year that we are able to do this. So let's wait.
Okay. And when you say on the first test you are trying to give and take energy, how exactly do you do that? What pattern do you use? How do you give the energy, for example, to the reactor? What do you give?
Just try to give mentally part of you, like thoughts, whatever.
Okay, and how do you do that? What thought do you use? Do you say, I love you? Do you say, I give you my love? Do you say, I give you my soul? How do you project that love or that energy toward the reactor itself?
Well, everybody has its own way, and I cannot say for others. I can say for myself, and I was trying to trying to give whatever I have, try to give to reactors what the reactor needs, and that's all.
And so when you try to give the reactor what it needs, what is that? What will that be?
Well, part of me. I'm trying not to be too attached to myself. Well, I'm not talking about physicality. I'm talking about thoughts, which is not physicality, which in a way it's fields, and I'm talking about soul, which I don't understand at the moment completely. And I was when I was giving, my thoughts were that I'm giving the fields of my soul to the reactor.
And did you observe anything physically or at a mental level on yourself when you're doing that?
When I feel the in the forehead. How do you call this part of the head? Forehead.
Front lobe?
Yeah. Yeah. In the top of the eyes.
Forehead. The third eye, it's called. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel some like tickling or the tickling in the but when it was when I was receiving, I think I don't remember not when I was giving.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, Mr. Cash, would you add something?
Okay, I'll take the microphone for a while.
Hi, John.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hi, John.
I wanted to share a bit my way. I'm more in the measurements, trying to see and to understand better what we are measuring. In fact, we have two Hall sensors. One on the stainless steel reactor, one in near the center reactor. On the stainless steel reactor, we had made a mounting to allow measurements at different position in respect to the center of the reactor. So if you look at the pictures, you can see there's a plastic plate with a arc on that plastic plate, which allows, in fact, to go up and down, but always at the same distance from the reactor. That was a part of the measurements we made, and we have seen that it could be seen that we have fields of different intensity at different position, but they were rather constant. There was a slight difference, but so we finally decided to put the sensor at the highest field position, and then from then we didn't move anymore. That was on the stainless steel reactor. On the
So that was just to get to dial it in to make sure that you can actually record different fields, right? So you're measuring the fields properly. And now that you've found the position with the highest reading, now you can set it there and change it by loading and unloading or whatever you're doing, right?
Yes, well, we fixed because we didn't see lots of differences. We have seen differences, but we decided to be on the one position, to stay on that position without moving anymore the sensor, because it has a sense of doing it that way. So what I wanted to also explain is that now that the position was fixed, we have measured. Well, for me, the measuring whatever angle we take from left to right is a question of seeing fields produced by a rotating sphere. So if we go straight on the line from left to right, we in fact increase the distance from the center. So we have verified that the measurements correspond to that kind of fields. When we go straight from left to right on a straight line, we see that we have a maximum near center, and then decrease to left and decrease to right. So by fixing the position of the sensor, we managed to have some measurements that were at one position, and then see the influence of the environment at that position without moving anymore, because the displacement of the sensor, the whole sensor, it's a three axis whole sensor. So we always measure the Z, which is in the direction of the sensor from the sensor out in front. That's a Z axis. We have the Y axis, which is in fact from the sensor and topwise. That's a positive Y direction. And then from the sensor left, that's the X positive direction. And the measurements gives us the magnitude of the B field, the whole of the B field, and gives us also the X, Y, and Z component of the field. So we have been working on that while Marek was still there. We have been working on data, but I have used those data in a file with recordings made 2 days ago, and that's the file you should be receiving. In fact, it's using all the data recorded during one revolution, and that's a recording made at rate of 1 kilohertz, so that makes one millisecond each new measurement. And you can see that by looking at the values we receive on the B axis, well, on the B, which is the B field, the global field, we have a variation of value which is quite strong. These measurements are still made on the stainless steel reactor. and they were made at the moment when we were changing the gas in the white reactor, so we could see some influence by changing the gas in the white reactor. We can see influence made on the fields measured on the stainless steel reactor. Why do I speak about these values collected? That's because for me it was a way to better understand what was happening. If we look at those fields, you see there are spikes, there are maximums occurring regularly, but those spikes, those maximum, there is a slight variation in the intensity of the spikes. So we have been lately measuring, keeping the value of the highest spike, keeping in this way the maximum that occurred at one moment in the past. And each time that there is some kind of increase in the fields, inducing a higher spike, that higher spike will be the value kept for what's coming next. So by keeping those high spikes gives us a kind of intuitive understanding of the trend we see, but it does not give any information of the instant value or the mean value we are receiving. So the recordings on the file of the data coming in is for me, has some interest for me. On the file that I sent you, I don't know if you all received it, but you can see the variation in time, which is could be seen as a when you have an electrocardiogram, you can see, in fact, the variation of the fields. That's with the horizontal axis, which would be time, and the vertical is the intensity of the measurement. And you have, after that, a kind of circular diagram. That's in fact by calculating the fields at each moment and reporting that on the polar polar drawing. So we have reported that in a way that we can see for every position of the reactor in one revolution, we see the fields we receive. So it would be interesting to see those fields at one instant in one position of the sensor in respect of all the other reactors, and we could have, and we could imagine to make the measurements with the sensor at the opposite direction of where it is fixed now, and see also the shape of the fields produced by the rotation of this one reactor in respect to the what happens in the other reactors. So that's an aspect which is for me interesting to see and to understand how the fields behave and how the shape of this the result obtained at this level. But the problem is it is very time consuming in the way that we haven't got a software dedicated to do this instantly. Having instant results of this kind would help us to understand much better. So receiving the stream of data and immediately convert that to a schematic circular polar vector drawing would allow us to much better understand what happens from one reactor influencing.
So
No, John, I
that
do have a question.
That revolution is on the XZ plane? The
revolution is on the B field. I can have the same for the X, Y, Z. So I would have 3 different drawings, polar vector drawings. So it's done in a spreadsheet. So it needs time to calculate and to modify. That's why if we had a way to systematically have the results from the data incoming, it would be very interesting. Another factor which has to be seen is that we have a small computer, I don't know how I can call it. It's for the other sensor, we have the incoming data going on the small computer that has no memory capabilities. It is a Windows-based system, but with very low internal memory to make any memorization. So for the other sensor, I cannot make the same drawings. I have to say that in fact the measurements we are doing, because of the scale of each sensor, differs. If we put the 2 sensors together, we see a difference which is a factor of nearly 3 or 4 in the magnitude we measure. So that's the calibration of the sensors that could be done, but it's not so important because we are looking at the trend. But we have to be aware that the measure we see on the black sensor is always higher than what we measure with the white sensor. The white sensor has a maximum magnitude of fields that would be around 8 to 10 Gauss, or how many? That would be 800 microtesla. And the other sensor, which is for much higher fields, starts with these low values. So the significance and the error that we measure should be corrected unless we just look at the trend, the values at one moment and next moment. On that sensor, they become significant only for that sensor. They have no significance if we don't make the correction to the value of the other sensor.
Unless you can see, you want to see the variation. The variation.
Yes, well, that's it. That's it. We are trying to see the exactly. We are trying to see the variations. That's the most important because we are looking at a trend
for influences.
Sorry?
You're looking for influences? One is influencing
yes, increases. We look for having the fields increase because we are going towards higher plasma in the system. So that's what has been explained by Marco. It's very time consuming because we cannot add the gas. It's what has been said before. It's like making a mayonnaise. You just put a little oil, and then when the field becomes stronger, you can add a bit more. So that's
sorry,
the
John.
way we have to. Yes, okay, go on.
I was going to ask about your measurements with the graph. to me, that looks like an X-ray flux of the sun, right? It'll look like different for everybody else, but does this doesn't measure any reversal of the fields though in this situation? But have you seen a reversal of the fields in the systems?
Now, if you look at the data, you have constant variation. Look at the first graph. You see that the fields go high, low, and you can have. If you look at those data, you see that in fact you have some variation between about 0.3 up to 0.75. That's the amplitude of the variation occurring at any moment. If you look at the figures, I left about 2 lines of figures, so you see that we have figures about the B, the first figure on line 2, because line 1 is the title of the column. So if you see what I mean, line 2, B is 0.746636. BX you see minus 0.204, BY minus 0.448, BZ is a plus 0.561. Those values, because we have each second we have 1,000 values. Those are the values we have been using to see, in fact, the period. On the graph, you see just underneath those values, you see there are values which occurs like a spike, and then high values but afterwards, which occurs like an oscillation. We have been using the spikes to define the period. And by using the spikes for the period, we from there have the second graph, which shows in fact the variation in angle. So those values are linked, but you see the value we see are more or less periodic. That periodicity is due to the shape and what's in the reactor, because for the balancing of the reactor we have put some washers, big washers. So the spike is due to the passing of the washer in front of the sensor. But the washer, in fact, because it's metallic, it's a steel washer, will concentrate more the fields at that moment. But the trend of the whole lot is what we have to see in respect to the influence made by the other reactors. So the shape may be the same, but the level, the mean level, will go up or down. So we have to understand the data we receive and the data we keep, because those data are varying so much. That's what we try to keep the highest value occurring at one moment, and see if at if later we just go over that one highest value. So that's a way to feel the trend of what's happening. So you see there are different ways of looking at what's happening, and well, these data are interesting and gives more more information, but the instant information in itself at one moment is not so significant. It's the whole trend which allows us to better understand what's happening. So we never have one value at one moment. It's varying all the time. And the variation is due also to the rotation of the other reactors. So we are measuring the fields, which is the sum of all the values of the field produced by all the environment. And that's the environment in which we have to look at.
Right, and this is just
John,
the stainless steel reactor.
how
measurements,
do you
repeat?
how do you interpret the bottom graph, please?
Okay, the bottom graph, I'll come back to you, Vince, afterwards. The bottom graph is in fact between, if you look at the first graph, you see there are sharp peaks. The first is at the beginning on 0, and the second is about 65, 67. You see that?
James, I think he's talking to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Could you repeat that, please?
During that's one period of the rotation of the sphere. And during that rotation, the sensor will measure values. You see we start at 0.75 about. Next, you see it goes down to 0.5 later, then goes down to 0.35, then up to 0.5, and you see all those variation. If you put the time of one revolution as proportional to the angle of the move of the reactor, that gives me the second graph, which is in fact a graph of the field, the intensity of the field in respect to the position of the reactor. And that's what allows us to see, in fact, that in each position of the reactor, we measure a different value. This graph can be repeated and we could have superposed on this measurement, on this one period cycle, we could add on all the next cycles coming in, and we would have a shape that would be a thick line giving another aspect, because at any moment the measurement is influenced by what is happening on the other reactors and from the environment. We know that the environment is not constant at all, but the variation of the environment is has less amplitude. But the variation of the rotation of the other reactors, because they are near and the fields produced by the plasma and the plasma interlock, we have more variation in the measurement. So we have to see that what we are looking at in this way is in fact the totality of what is happening. So you have the stainless steel rotating, the stainless steel reactor rotating, but you have all the three other reactors which are rotating, and each of them has some plasma, and each of them has can produce influence on this sensor. So we are looking at.
Yes, I understand that. Are you looking? Is it like you are looking at the reactor from the top down, And you're measuring the field surrounding the reactor from the top
No,
looking down? Is that
no. We are in fact looking towards the center of the stainless steel reactor with the sensor not moving at all. We don't change the position of the sensor. We are just looking at the fields, at the incoming data from that one position of the sensor.
so what is your X and Y axis? What does it represent? The field strength?
So on the first graph, x-axis is the measuring. So it's you can see it as the time, and x-axis is in the amplitude, and the graph I have there is the amplitude of the B. So
Right.
the global value of B.
Sorry,
Right.
I've copied the data that shows behind that graphic, and it has the B and the X and the Y and the Z measurements, I think. Is that correct?
So the data which are behind, you have first column, it's a number which is the block. Each block represent 1 second. The second column is a B, the global, it's the total B. Next column C is BX, then BY, BZ in the E column. F column gives you the units, and you have the temperature, a date, and the serial. In fact, what is called serial is in fact something proportional to the time, a kind of timestamp that each data receives. So we've been
so
using
you have
that.
all the 3 dimensions in this table. You could have a flower
I
graphic like this for each
exactly.
axis.
Yeah, that can be done, but you see, I'm working there. If you see one period, it's in fact 15 rotation per second. I'm looking at the data for one cycle, which is in fact
for measurements. For measurements.
1/15th of a second. Those are all the data collected for one rotation, and that's about 67 values. So it can be repeated for X, Y, Z, and have the graph. The graph are not the same, but they are. That gives you a trend of the values. If you look at BY, Y is always negative. If you look at X or Z, you have positive or negative values. And if you see that the value is positive then negative, you have a kind of inversion of the field produced by the plasma itself. So if there is a complete inversion of the field, that would be seen in the direction of the field measurements.
So each record is 2 seconds. Is that right? Each line of this table is like 2 seconds.
No,
1 second.
no.
I can't remember.
No. Sorry. Each line represents 1/1000th of a second, 1 millisecond.
Each line of this graphic, of this table.
It's 1 millisecond.
1 millisecond. Okay.
Yeah, each rotation, it's measuring, and it does 15 rotations a second.
That's it. So you have about 65 to 66, I don't know. Well, it
You have
was
almost two
around.
rotations.
Yes, because in fact we don't have a precise counting of the rotation. It depends on the speed of the rotation of the reactor. So it's around 65 to 67 data per revolution. So if you multiply 65 by 15, should bring you to the 1 second. Is it clear?
I still don't understand your second graph. How did you create the second graph? What does it represent?
We've been using the timestamp or more the serial value as a way to calculate the angle. So by using the value which is there and making the difference, you have something which is proportional to the angle. You take the first position, the first value that you define as the start. You take the 67th value, saying that that's the end. If you make the difference between those two, that will give you in the serial values, that will give you a total value that you equal to one revolution, which is 2 pi, and then you calculate the angle each time. And by using the sine and cosine, you just put position 1 point in respect to the angle you are working with. Do you understand now?
Not really. It's difficult. How do you interpret the second graph? I mean, I understand the first graph. You have the magnetic field strength, the B versus time, the change of B versus time, and it goes in a cycle because your reactor is spinning.
Yes.
But in the second graph, how do you interpret this circular thing? What? I couldn't imagine what does it represent.
Well, for example, you see at the angle of about 45 degrees, you have a kind of maximum in the in the kind of circle there. That corresponds, in fact, to a peak value in the first graph.
I see.
Okay.
If he gets a ball and the field at that point is turned and taken a reading, at that point is what is valued. That's what.
Okay. If you want to understand in another way, we have some reactor which is rotating and is circular. You take the value in one position, you will measure the B, By, Bx, By, Bz. I'm using only the total B value. And then in that position, for that angle of the sphere, I put the distance from the center to the end point of my vector. Then I rotate slightly the reactor and I have a new measurement. Then I put on that angle, I put on my graph the distance from the center, from 0, 0, the center of my graph. I put the new value in that second position, second angle. Then I take a third angle, and I repeat the same all around the reactor. And that is my second graph.
Every 5 and some.
So, sorry, John. What you're saying though is that if there was no change, let's say it was steady at 0.7, then the bottom graph would be a circle. Is that right?
Complete circle. If the field was exactly the same in every angle without any influence of what is outside and.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
So that's just what I said earlier. It's as if like you're looking at the reactor from the top, looking down, and you can see the field surrounding the reactor.
Yes and no, because in fact we are looking at the reactor. It's
From the side.
what as a sphere, but we have influences from all the reactors at the same time.
Yes. Yes, I understand that.
I think we may have lost everything. Contact. Okay, I'll try to reconnect with the people here. No, all good. I'm gonna put my headphones on and see if that's the situation. Okay, we need to reconnect with folks. Can anybody in the Skype call hear me right now? We've lost the audio here. Okay, let me figure out what's going on. That's right, Vince. I can't hear you, but you can hear me. So, something happened real weird where the voices all went really low and strange and then died on this end and on the live stream. Let's see here. Let me check my Skype preferences.
Time Rick is trying to fix it. Vince, could you send me the PDF, please?
I can hear you, Ludmil.
Sure.
And you're coming through
well,
on
I'm
the
on Skype.
Right. So that's coming through
Rick,
fine.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Vince.
Oh, okay.
So we're seeing good now all of a sudden.
All seems to be back.
Yes. One of those
your
strange little.
Your live stream.
It sounds pretty good there, Vince. A little bit strained, but it seems good. Are you good to go? At your end?
Yeah, I think we're still good. Yeah,
Great.
We're good here.
Okay, now where were we, John?
I go on with the second chart. The 45 angle peak we have there correspond to double washers, steel washers that goes past the sensor. That's why we have a peak. And it's in some ways it's a way to see and to check where we are in the rotation. So those peaks are helping me.
Is that the really sharp peak, or is that the double peak?
That's the sharp peak. Well,
Okay,
on the
that's
on
what I
the
thought.
on the second graph, if you look at the 45-degree angle at the point 0606,
Yeah.
that's the peak corresponding to the washers going in front of the sensor.
Ah, okay.
So we don't have, if you look at that way, you don't see something which is very sharp, because it's during a certain angle that you have the washers going in front of the sensor. But anyway, it's interesting to see that by using this data, we can have some information which helps to understand more intuitively what's happening on the reactor in respect to the angle of the reactor in front of the sensor.
I've got a question about
Thank
that,
you.
John, before you go.
Yes, go.
Um,
Yes.
Is the influence of the electric motors shown on this graph at all, or do you think it shows up from the sensor?
Well,
Yeah.
it certainly shows up, but don't forget that the influence of a magnet decreases in respect of the square of the distance. We are not too near the motor. The motor is underneath the system at a certain distance. We do have some influence, certainly, with the magnet, but the motor has mainly fixed magnets in it. Well, it's every electric motor, well, the DC motor has fixed magnets aiming to the rotor. So the external shielding of the motor will in fact lower quite a lot
That's true.
the
Yeah.
strength of the magnets inside the motor.
Yeah.
But there is some influence, but that influence is mostly constant for the magnets. It is not from the rotor, but the rotor creates, in fact, some spikes, but mainly the field in the rotor is always, or more or less, in the same direction. You have the commutation of the in the motor that will make some ruptures in the field, but mostly the field is one direction with some spikes.
We did do a few tests last night, Guy and I, with just an iPhone type magnetic field detector with a electric motor running, and we could get a reading about a foot or so away. It started to make a pretty significant reading, and it faded out quite rapidly after that, and was quite prevalent when you were right up next to the motor within a centimeter or so. So yeah,
yes,
you're right.
Well, that's what we have to be aware that there is some when we make some measurements and we have strong magnets. Well, the motor, is 150 watts or so. I don't know exactly if it's not. It's yours. It's a 200 watt. On my system is 200. This one, I think it's something like 150, around 150. So it's these are DC motors that are quite strong already.
Okay, I have another question. Have you guys considered building systems that don't have electric motors, that have some sort of other auxiliary way of turning the reactors, such as, I don't know, wind-up system or a clockwork system or springs or, you know, some other water
we
wheel.
haven't got yet a windmill type of motor to rotate, but
Well, the idea being that Dave just mentioned compressed air is another one. The idea of keeping all magnetic fields away from the apparatus as much as possible to be able to measure the actual magnetic fields given off by the reactor itself as accurately and easily as possible without extraneous noise, let's say, from the motors.
One of the things which we spoke about this week is that now it is, in a way, you speak casually about have we managed to hold a plasma or create a plasma, which we know we have. Creating plasma from a nano-coated material is an unknown phenomena. In this forum and in this in the Keshe Foundation links, you speak very casually, have you created a plasma? If you go to the plasma physicists and tell them I produce plasma out of nanomaterial, they laugh at you and just give you a good kick in the backside. This has what, in such a short term and time, has become so radically accepted in this forum, and where you work through this development of new technology. Plasmas are not created as you see, even with the little what we call balls in the physics laboratory. They use rotation and static energy. We are producing plasma in a way by the use of gases interaction, or at the same time holding it through what do you call it, magnetic pressure, which the nano layers create. This is a huge development in the world of nuclear and plasma physics. And you lot in this forum very speak, oh, have you created that, this and that. But if you realize what is happening in a program like a JET project or the ITER project, which is supposed to happen at $30 billion in the next 10 years once they finish it, they try to create a magnetic, what do you call it, envelope to hold the plasma by introducing huge amount of energy to contain the plasma in it. In a very simple way, through this development of new technology and what we have shown, you create the same containment through magnetic field within layers of the nanomaterial. This science is unknown. This knowledge is literally the first times discussed. The people on the background in the plasma world are rubbing their hands how these stupid people don't know what they achieved. We fully know what's achieved, but that's what we said. We bring this technology so smoothly to the world public that they don't even think about the wrong ways which was thought up to now, spending billions to create a magnetic holding for a plasma. This is a breakthrough in such a major scale that sooner or later somebody will come up and say, these people don't know what they are doing. I know exactly what I'm teaching and I know exactly where I'm taking the technology. To make it reachable, that we don't think about the wrong ways of the past. You don't need these tokamak reactors to hold or develop reactors, plasmas. But what is the new achievement? The new achievement is now, as I explained to you, if you didn't understand it before, we explain again for the people who are new. The nano layers are gaps and holes, and they create different magnetic field layers. So what in reality you've done, you created a spectrum of magnetic field strength which covers from the principal strength to matter and submatter below magnetic gravitational field strength. So whatever you create in these reactors, and we've shown it again and again here, we can withdraw all the matter, but the plasma is held. And even the knowledge seekers here don't understand this fully what's happening. The holding of the plasma in the core is due principally and totally to the nano coating which is put around the reactor internally, or with a pin inside which is holding to all the field strength of the magnet. In a way, you can contain a ball by putting it in a cage, or you can contain a ball by putting a string at the end of it and holding it. In the reactors which are not coated, we have placed a pin in the middle. So we have put a string to the plasma. But the layer itself is creating through this interaction the conversion of the gases to plasma. In the other cases, like the one which fully coated outside, we have made a containment for the plasma by caging it. These kind of creation of plasma and holding of the plasma is a radical breakthrough in the plasma technology. In a way, by introducing no energy, all our motors, all our reactors have no electrical connection whatsoever. They are rotated by motor externally, even by belts, which means there is no, what do you call it, a conductive material connected to the reactor. So when you do this, you have created a condition in the position that I explained this to John yesterday, to the knowledge seekers. Now that we have managed to create a plasma in this condition out of fresh air, this is how plasma is created in the universe. Now we, through the motion and interaction of the different strength reactors, we can create motion for these plasmas. It's a matter for the knowledge seekers to understand, and you lot to understand more and more what's happening. So what I even said, I think yesterday or the day before to John, once the plasma is established in his reactor and can sustain in conjunction with the other 3 reactors, that we make one plasma out of the 4 reactors in the environment of the lab, we can just hammer the reactor of John away because it's porcelain. The others are steel. We have to go there and physically dismantle it. And by literally hammering the what do you call it, destroying or breaking the porcelain ceramic reactor which John has made, we should be able to contain the plasma in the same position at the same speed of rotation on its own. This is not a fairy tale. Look at the sun. Sun doesn't have a container and there's no motor. The plasma of its environment dictates its position and rotation. And what happened? Somewhere in that structure, then there is an interface between the conversion of the magnetic fields to matter. So the reactor will make itself an interface physical show. Be it like the GANs, or be it as a solid material like the surface of the planet, or on the surface of the stars, where at the end, when the material converts, the interface of the system is far enough from the central gravitational magnetic field that allows in that bandwidth for what we call liquid surface to appear. So in reality, the surface liquid we see, what we say of plasma, of a hydrogen or magnetic fields or helium on the surface of the sun, is because of the furtherness from the position of the central core or central point of the star, which leads to its material manifestation. So you got to, when you say, can we rotate it without anything? In a very coming soon time, when the knowledge seekers understand the whole process, we will break one of these cores to see and to show that plasma does not need containment of physicality and rotation. But at the moment, here is a position as I've seen it in past 2-3 weeks, in so many ways, as I explained to the knowledge seekers, due to their own openness and sharing of the knowledge, we have opened too fast the knowledge to the knowledge seekers. They are lost. They are totally lost. They see things, they don't know what they are doing. They try to make head or tailors grasp something somewhere that they can attach their knowledge to. But in time, suddenly in a few weeks' time, or a couple of months, or a few months' time, when they grasp the whole thing, they realize what a gift has been given to them. It's the same with you lot. You're seeing these pictures, you're seeing these reactors that are running by motors. You have one reactor. If you can achieve one reactor core condition, which is a single solar system, which is a star without any planet, there is full life structure within the structure of this star. There is a dictating position in respect to another point of reference, which is another twinity. There is another twin stars which dictates its position, even though you cannot see the twin star. It's an electron and a proton. So this, as the world of science opens up, you will understand a next step in the world of cosmophysics, which most of the physicists, cosmophysicists never understood and never understand. Even the solar systems behave and work as atomic structure with number of electrons and protons. What this means, and a star itself, even having a solar system, is electron in respect to a proton. So it's not only being twin, but being part of a set. And when the cosmophysicists and understand this process, then you understand the fingerprinting for the development of space travel in the future. So you can go, not only go from one planet to another, but you can go to one star and find out which set of the stars as an electron position central core is. Then you can travel within that structure of the plasma of that, what you call super solar system, which means there is another star which is bigger and the rest of the stars are like electrons rotating. Doesn't matter what the internal dictation of the environmental plasma is. So this is the process of learning, and the learning here is too fast, but I understand sometimes it has to be done this way because there is not enough time for what is about to develop and to happen. But at the same time, you've got to look at the totality of the structure. What does this mean? You look at 1.1 reading of one rotation. That 1 point of what you see is not the center core. All the data which John has shown, all the graphs you've seen, this is a subsidiary reactor which is sitting at one of the 120-degree positions, and you change a gas in another reactor which is another 120 degree across more or less of the plate, and we change the amount of gases in that third reactor. And we see the changes in the reactor which the detector has been attached to. What you might have forgot to remember, or you've forgotten, is that Marco spent a lot of time last week calibrating this reactor, which you now see all the data from. We more or less know, we tried to establish as much as possible, it's about 15 pages of data we collected here, is that how the plasma behaves for increase of 1 unit of hydrogen, how the plasma behaves when you add 1 unit of nitrogen. Then he emptied the whole reactor and he started loading again without argon and just with nitrogen. So we have a good understanding or rough understanding of the behavior of the reactor, which you see the data. But the data you see, which John has shown, this is a subsidiary reactor. It's a what do you call a boundary reactor. It's not the main reactor. So what you see changes in these, what do you call it, side reactor, is not due to the changes in this reactor. It is due to another subsidiary, another sub-reactor on the other side of the table, which the gases in it are changed, and we see the effect of it on both on the main detector in the center of the set and on the subsidiary. The two detectors are set in the way that they both look in the same direction near enough, but the main detector, which is in the center core, looks across the equator of the core, and the detector which you see in the data from John sits in equator down by about 40 degrees, 45 degrees to the South Pole. So, but both detectors look on their x-axis to what comes from John's side, where John's reactor is. We see the influences of the fields which is received or perceived to be received from John's side. The z-axis look more or less across where reactor number 2 or B sits. And then the Y reactor with Y detector on both sensors look into the vertical condition of gravitational magnetic field of the environment in respect to the center of the Earth. So with two reactors and two detectors, the way they are set up, we look as much as possible in all directions of the flow of the fields in the system. Yesterday, I explained to the knowledge seekers the gap between the center core detector and subsidiary core detector, which you see in the data, is about half a meter, 60, 70 centimeters, no more. But even in this gap, we see that the center detector shows receiving fields on the x-axis, and the subsidiary detector shows rejecting fields, or they switch. And sometimes when you watch very closely, when one switches, after a while the other one switches and it goes back again. So we have not managed to establish a balanced plasma, internal plasma environment between all four reactors. Yesterday I put 4 ring magnets on the table of different sizes, and I tried to explain to the knowledge seekers, at the moment your reactors are like this. One is big, one is small, one is tiny in respect to their magnetic field strength. And then I put another 4 equal, exact, similar rings next to each other on the table. Then I said, when you can achieve and balance all your 4 cores to this position is the time that you left. This is how, if you change the whole position is that knowledge seekers here, and most of you, have to move away from the habit of looking at the physicality of the reactor. You have to look into how the fields in these reactors interact with each other and how they influence each other. I look for the peaks. I look, this is something I explained yesterday. I'm trained by as a nuclear reactor system control for nuclear reactors. I don't look at numbers majority of the time. I look for interactions. In a nuclear reactor control room, you have hundreds of gadgets, everything running around. You look for indications. Data is irrelevant most of the time. This is where most of the nuclear reactor controllers lose control, because they look for one data and they lose the whole picture. So I go into the lab, I look at all the meters, I look at the data which they've collected, I look at the field detectors, I look at the generator, the power supplies, and it gives me an indication how long I need to be back before something happens. And I said yesterday to Marco, every time I come back, something happens. Because I know these reactors, I built these reactors except John's. These are the babies I gave life to. So I expect their behavior. The day before, when they start feeling gases, I said I'll come back. Tomorrow when we come back, it should be 3.2 plus something. And from 2.67 or 8, we were 3.3. And yesterday, when I looked at the structure and the data, I said, well, if you go to 0.4, 4.5, it'll be good, but I don't think it'll happen because we have a peak at 3.7. The knowledge seekers look at numbers. I looked because I explained to John, reactor number 3, or what we call the central reactor, core number 3, showed a reduction from around 0.3 amps to 0.09 amp. And then at that point, we had a peak. So I was looking to see if that peak happens again. Because it's connected to the, when you have a reduction in the current, it means there is less pressure. You don't need that much pressure. So it means when the pressure goes is when the gravitational field internally is trying to match with the Earth gravitational magnetic field. But when you look at the data, when you look at the motor, that motor, I watched that motor every time I went in, is motor number 3 for outer core of the core C, the center core. It variates, it vibrates between plus 0.11 to 0.38, sometimes 0.4. And this morning when I went back in, I asked the knowledge seekers to take the data again. This morning, the gap is very narrowed down. When I went there at 5 o'clock in the morning, it was rotating between 0.25 and 0.32. And in the morning, when we got in, it goes back to 0.2 and 0.3. This has a very clear indication. The lab sits in an open environment with windows where the gravitational magnetic field of the sun has a direct interaction on the fields in the room. And this I have seen several times in past few weeks. That depends on how the situation is. Some reactors react. But at the same time, this drop and sudden surge of release comes because the internal reactor, due to its construction, creates 3 different kind of plasmas in 3 different locations. And 2 of these reactors keep on taking charge, but due to the situation with reactor A, which is a floating core inside, that releases a surge. Reactor B. So we saw the surge, we see the surge, but you have to look at the whole parameters. Most of you have 1 reactor, you don't see these characteristics we see here. Because now we are dealing with a real situation. If you go back and stand back and look at the whole picture, you'll see the side pictures all the time from the lab. If we give you a picture, a bird's eye view of the floor, what do you see? You see exactly the same structure as a plasma of a molecule of amino acid. Oxygen sits in the center. 1 reactor which is weaker, very much like John, as the one which is absorbing energy, is the hydrogen. You have the reactor of Arman, which is on the left, is the like a, what do you call, like a nitrogen, because it can increase and reduce fields according to what the other one needs. And you have the still reactor in the back with the detector, which behaves as a carbon, as a communicator, as a interconnector between the 3. The center reactor calls all the fields together. But when you see the flow of the current in different directions in the core number E, which is Marco runs it, that behaves exactly like a graphite, a graphene, a carbon. We see between 2 reactors within 60 centimeters from each other, different direction of the flow of plasma. I explained this yesterday. The plasma goes out and it comes back from the top between the 2 reactors. So within 60 centimeters, we have created a plasma environment which has a boundary which is not balanced yet. So the whole structure, what we are doing here, and next happens maybe next few weeks or months, is to build up a homogeneous plasma conformation and interaction. And this is what will happen. You won't get fantastic results flying. It might happen if we can reach it. But at the moment, the way Arman explained, we had to turn John's reactor upside down, because I was with Marco last week and with Arman. We, after the reactors were put on the floor on their side to see the interaction on the ground level, how they do, and one pointed to the center. Then the reactors were put, all three of them, in an angle facing to the center reactor. It's like a cannon. We just raised them step by step in 3 or 4 steps, or 2 or 3 steps, to one to look at the bottom of the reactor, all 3 north poles, and one was feeding all the fields to the equator line, and one to the top in the north pole of the center reactor, to understand the behavior. And this is how we turn reactors back to front, all of them. This is what is a part of the formation of the space reactors in a space, because slowly we do things, and when we come back to it again, we see it, we done it before. The reason for this test was to see the effect of the reactors when they are on the side or an angle, because in the coming time, when you build your reactors for deep space travel, you have a center core star formation, and you have a number of reactors on the boundary, periphery of the outside of the craft. These are needed. So these reactors are not facing the way same as the 4 reactors in the center, but they are facing into the line of the interaction. These are partially for protection system, partially for material production, and partially as part of the when you want to reach and speed up to a certain condition, certain position. When you travel in the deep magnetic field, you create an additional shield in a reverse condition through your reactors, which is on the boundary, sitting in 90 degrees, or you can change them to the angle of the center of the core, which they get their supply of energy or magnetic gravitational field plasma from the center core, which means you strengthen your magnetic shield in the direction of the flow. You can line up. So in some of you, when you see what you call it crafts in flight, you see flashing lights around, except the 3 center core and mother core. These lights are not there for showing we are here. These lights are reactors which create a specific condition for protection of the reactor and creation of the environment of the shielding. This is what we did this test, and I explained to the knowledge seekers. So putting the reactors on the side is not just to see the fields, but to start understanding the process of the next step of realigning cores for protection and material production. As you put fields in, we see the changes. But the more now we spend the first 2 months here building all sorts of reactors, and you've seen it as a world population as we did, successes and failures. But if you look at it now, after breaking reactors, setting it up, changing motors, now we can do anything we like with our reactors. As you've seen, we turned John's reactor upside down, it's still running. We turn them on the angles, it's still running. We can roll them on the ground, they're still running. Because all that hard work has got the results now. We have a very solid core base. We do, like as you've seen John explain to you, there are 2 steel rings on the side of the core. That's why his graph has got a peak in it. This core, this balancing was done by idea of Ivan a few weeks ago to balance it because it was rattling too much. So he put a tape on it, and we taped these rings into the wall of the core. And running it for now for 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever, the tapes are coming off. We literally stopped the core reactor, We put a tape on it this week, once or in past week, once or twice. We taped it again, and Marco put a couple of more tapes to secure because these washers were dropping off. And we start back again. We don't need to go and sit and wait to plasma to be created, because the nano coating inside holds the plasma. And then we start back again as nothing happened. The hard work of past 2-3 weeks has paid off in being able to have such a robust system. Now I explain to the knowledge seekers, we are in a privileged position to have 4 half-core reactors. And very soon, in next coming weeks or whatever, we will set one full spherical reactor set next to half a sphere set. We have all the facilities for it. We just got to put a couple of power supplies in. And so you will see 2 star formation sets. And I can bet which one's going to fly first, because I know them. I've literally all the reactors except porcelain, they all belong to the foundations, been built over past 10 years. So every characteristic about them are known. So you start seeing new interaction, new plasma conditions. And then you will see the interaction between the 2 sets. How they interact, which set will pull, which set will feed. We have put A1's reactor aside on the side, but it's still interacting with all the reactors. It's still mastering because it's the holder of the more of the mass. Even the center core in the star formation is running, but the master still sits with A1s. Even we have disconnected it and put it aside on the side of the, you should see it in the pictures. We put a magnetic plastic in front of it as well to block it, but it's still dictating because he holds a huge amount of plasma. So you got to understand, even in your works, in your labs, in what you research with, you have to understand the totality and interaction of the totality, not just following certain numbers. I see peaks. Yesterday I came in the lab, I put a big note, don't touch anything. I go out, I come back, some tinkling fingers has done it. And I could not understand why. And they thought it's just a peak. It's not just a peak. And then we had to wait and we achieved another peak, more than before. Is to see how figures operate and interact and why, how long it takes, what strength comes up, why there was a surge. These peaks are irrelevant in the operation of the whole plasma. But these peaks shows dangerous positions in your structure and in your plasma setting. Because these peaks are created when a massive amount of plasma is released in the wrong direction. The direction of the peak, how it's been achieved, it means something is holding. I'm not interested if you go to 0.12 or 13 or 100. If it's once to them it's achieved the peak, there's nothing. To me, is a danger point. This to me is a loss of set. This is loss of a craft when it goes into a roll. But as knowledge seekers don't understand these things, so for me it's important to find these problems before we achieve lift. And this is, you look at the motor running, you look at the peak of the motor, you look at the behavior of the other motors. This peak, was it absorbed the energy by other motors or just absorbed by the environment? And how it showed itself on the second, second meter or second detector, and how the other cores done. Every time you see a huge fluctuation, unless you have a bearing problem, unless you have a problem in the rotation, and you see repetition of the same numbers in the same sequence, this shows you there is and there could be a plasma blockage. Plasma blockage is a dangerous thing. You try to avoid it. You try to stop it, because plasmas, we've seen it with Marco in the steel reactor, which has got the side detector on it. In the steel core, we have 2 plasmas inside the same core. It's due to the construction of it. Because Marco spent time marking it, he went all the way from North Pole to South Pole and measured it very, I think must be about 20-30 readings from one point to another. And through that, we see 2 peaks and the separation of the 2. Now, if one of these plasmas in one of these environments releases itself to the other one, God help you, you lose everything. in space. We see the same thing now in the mother reactor, in the center reactor. Yesterday we had a peak. I'm not interested in that peak. I'm very interested in that peak from failure point of view, and why that peak came within matter of seconds when the outer core, or core number 3, suddenly dropped to 0.1 literally amp. You got to look at you got 3 motors running next to each other. The total weight of the construction of the reactor is 22 kilos. The total construction weight of the inner cores is about 9.5 kilogram. And we are running literally 3 reactors, 3 cores at a speed of just under 1000 RPM with less than round between variation between 6 to 10 watts. It's a huge amount. Most of this weight now is carried by the plasma, not only being on the bearing. And then that's why the smallest variation we see in the field of the plasma in Armand's core, which is sitting on the side, affects the operation of the internal operation of the other cores. Start looking at the totality. Start looking at every time we walk into the lab, changes the figures, but nobody has noticed it. Even the motors change because you affect the environment of the system. The sun affects the environment of the plasma where it sits. The whole structure, you got to start looking. You will find out, I advise you, if you're building reactors, make a reactor which can be opened up and thrown away in a few weeks, in a few months' time when you can contain the plasma. You can create plasma anywhere in the universe, anywhere on this planet without use of any motors, any containment. This is where the extension of the knowledge will come, but you got to see it, otherwise everybody becomes a magician. Because if you can create a dynamic plasmatic environment, and then once you establish it, you can hold on to it, and you put it in interaction with other ones, the speed of rotation and positioning will come by the other reactors. Always remember, the surface of the sun is not the container of the sun, but the surface of the sun is where the matters in the magnetic gravitational field of the sun can materialize, can reduce in strength enough to become liquid state, or what we call liquid plasma. This is what we are going with the production of the new GANS state of material. The new GANS reactors are going to which John has brought as a ceramic. He made them when he was in Belgium last week, are going to the manufacturers of the reactors today. So from next week we have twin reactors, all GANS filled only. But again, with these reactors we are putting a center pin nanomaterial to be able to hold on to the plasma that stops it from wobbling. So this is the extension of knowledge. It's the next step for us is to create a balanced environment between the 4 reactors. At the moment, John's reactor is literally sponging all the fields. And where it's holding it is a mystery for me. I don't understand how this reactor absorbing and holding so much plasma and taking all the fields, because what it does, it converts part of these fields which is receiving to a plasma internally, because we see that through the x-axis on the both detectors. The x-axis performance, which actually goes into fresh air, and the only thing in this path is John's reactor, is indication that this reactor is playing a behavior which is not normal with the whole reactor. This is what if you keep on getting these rotational cycles, if John posted or you've seen it here, look for the x-axis on both of them. Then without having a detector on John's system, you should be able to understand partially the behavior of this reactor, because you pick it up near enough the core and you pick it up 60 centimeters away from the core. and it shows you if it's receiving and how it's doing. One can be used in conjunction as a gravitational field, the strength of it, and one as a magnetical field detector. So I have realized in the past week and past 2 or 3 weeks, I have pushed the knowledge seekers to the environment they are not comfort and are still in their schizophrenic material condition. And changing it will take time. And you see a lot of resistance because there is no understanding of the totality. And this will go on till gradually the realization comes what is happening. But till that time, I will follow and try to bring things in to show. At the moment, the only interest here is when we're going to fly. Any gimmick has been done on this lab to see something flying. It will not fly till you understand the control and balancing of the fields. Because if it flies, one of them will fly in your body and in your face, or into the building. You won't see a total flight. I can create total flight in the reactor, single reactor, very easy. But when you have a star formation, the totality counts. But at the same time, in this process, the knowledge seekers are learning what happens if one reactor is playing. So they are learning to control the formation through one reactor. It happens. In the space, you will lose plasma, you lose reactor. Doesn't mean the end. It's just how you can bring a control in to subsidize it. Use the boundary reactors to pressurize, create a false condition till you can recreate the plasma, or use the 3 reactors to create a false environment or imaginary environment for a master reactor space in the center. What does this mean? In the position to come in a very, hopefully in a year or 2, when the knowledge seekers are more advanced in the knowledge, we remove the center core from the setting. And the 3 reactors together will create themselves a mother reactor which are comfortable to work with. They will create their own plasma environment, gravitational magnetic field. So this happens all the time. This is part of the condition of the safety of the flight system. What happens if you lose a mother reactor? It's not the end. It's understanding how you create the environment and how between the 360 degrees you can create a new plasma environment without the material condition that you can hold on to till you can replace the core, or you can develop a new core. And you can carry on for thousands of years without the physicality of the center core. This is again condition of physicality and tangibility, which knowledge seekers don't understand. They are looking for figures. What about this? We just switch the thing off. No, because the peak is irrelevant. The peak shows that the exact where the problem is not the solution. The more you increase the peak, the more you go up to a higher figure, the more dangerous condition you create. I'm interested to see 12, 20, whatever Gauss on the detector, but that peak explains to me 2 things. The plasma is building up. I explained yesterday, but it wasn't understood in the lab, that I know the peak is there because it shows to me a danger point. But as the peak goes up, so does the flux, average flux between the whole reactors is going up. So the plasma is building up very gradually, but you have to look where the peaks comes, which reactor is creating the release of the peaks. And strange enough, when you look at the data, the peak still comes from the center core of the inner core in conjunction with almonds. It's the way the direction of the flow of the plasma indicates where it came and what caused it and what it is. But the knowledge seekers don't see it. To them it's just numbers, it's going and the thing is there and nothing happens. This is what you got to learn, to look at the overall data in respect and how it came about. We had, again, reactor a few times going back to 9, but we saw no surge, which this meant something in the center core released a huge amount. And we've seen this one again a few weeks ago when Ivan's reactor was knocked out. And again, you see a steel reactor behind a copper reactor, exactly the formation it is now. So there is a position where these reactors are charging up, and then they release the fields. And then the direction of the flow on the y-axis explains to us what and how, when the lift will come. They are far away from lift. They achieved it twice they could do. Even like this week, they were near to lift, but the lift was disturbed. I see it, but they have to learn. We are not going to do a magic show just to show a lift. No. It has to be learned. It has to be tested. We have to be able, in a coming time, like a reactor in Canada or reactor in China, we have to be able to connect to each other to communicate. And it'll be instantaneous. But it'll come. We'll share you the knowledge it is. Part of this process has already started with Japan. The position now with the Keshe Foundation with Fukushima is we have started collaboration at a very high level to find a solution with Fukushima. It's done by the request and approach of the Japanese government and not the foundation. We did a test with thanks to Yukoko and the knowledge seekers, and now we have moved into a very straightforward, direct development and evaluation. And as we hear that one of the Japanese major corporations has used part of this technology, as was given in the free key, and they say they have developed a technology that can absorb radiation. This is part of the GANS technology which you released. And that is a gift to the Japanese government, at least to start using a different way. But the Japanese government, as a lot, they want to look at the overall structure of the technology in the nuclear industry. And we collaborate very closely and we respect for their approach. And it's done at the highest level. We keep it. All our emails are read. As I explained to you, the Belgian government and American government have submitted letters to Google and GoDaddy that we are a terrorist organization. They have to get access to all our emails. So if the Americans and the Belgian authorities know what we are corresponding, so should the rest of the Keshe Foundation around the world. This is the position we are in. We've been approached at a very high level through our own channels by the Japanese government, and the materials have been moved in position for testing and evaluation and collaboration. This is how advanced the technology is and how government respects our way. There is a further development for the environmental cleanup. I think Mr. Cho is aware of it. We have received independent laboratory data that it shows we can clean up literally all environmental conditions and how fast we can do. In conditions of change of phosphor in our contamination in the ground for materials, the success is up to 60 to 90% reduction. And it brings everything below the international levels that it can be used, the waters can be used. And this has been done, and now the foundation has entered commercial development of it by the company which proposed it, and they achieved it. They've done all the data, they've been open with us. All the lab tests they've done on the material reduction has been supplied to us on an open level. I've been to the lab in the past couple of weeks, and independent laboratory is doing it. So we have shown all the land contamination, water contaminations can be reduced drastically through a new system which I have developed through materials and the plasma reactor technology. So now we are entering the commercial phase. The Italian, what do you call it, generator, we've been told finally it's been agreed and done and the materials been put together. So in a coming, hopefully they say in a week or two, we should be able to show this reactor for the first time in public. But it all depends. It took them 5 months to do it the way they like it. They've come up with new materials. I was informed in the past 48 hours that finally the reactor is ready for assembly. But they're happy with it. It's supposed to last 30, 50 years. They were looking for the materials which can wait or live or be strong enough to survive such a time. As you've seen with the reactors in the lab, we got 4 reactors running now for 3, 4 or 5 weeks. We take one off, we put it back in, and it goes on. These reactors should go for hundreds of years unless there's a mechanical failure. And even if you have a mechanical failure and you contain the plasma through the nano layering, you just change the motor, change the frame. This is what we done here before a couple of weeks ago. We don't open the core, we don't disturb the plasma. We hold the plasma in this container like you hold the water in the container, and then when we build the system, we just put it back on and we run. Unless the reactor breaks. We have a reactor which broke, and you've seen the pictures of it last week in production. So the technology development is, and it goes, because there is something very important I've never shared, but you as knowledge seekers, as the Keshe Foundations around the world, have to understand what is going on in reality. All the tests, all the reactors, all the data you are putting on the internet, and all the knowledge is shared, is immediately deciphered, analyzed by the world space agencies and nuclear industry. We are teaching, and I know, and they know in the communications we receive and we have, that space agencies are looking into every aspect. Nobody has shared this knowledge like this before, as I told you. So all these reactors, all the teachings we do, all the teachings knowledge seekers do, I watch your, what do you call it, Facebook or Skype's connections, what you teach is give each other connection, is fully watched and analyzed by scientists, because in a way we are teaching the top guys in NASA, but they're too ashamed to say they're learning. It's the same with the space agencies around the world. So you are not just, what we put out here is not just for you lot. The scientists in the backgrounds are watching every move, every development, every knowledge we share. So this is part of the process which we brought out. This is how the openness of the Fukushima testing and us releasing the paper of the Fukushima within the 48 hours from releasing the Fukushima paper, we received the approach from the Japanese government. So this is how it works. They know we are clear, open about our process, and it does not need to be in time. If now Mitsui has announced they produce such a system, we achieved our goal. At least part of the radiation has been solved. One of the things you had to realize, I mentioned in the passing by in the past few weeks about the material and the reduction you saw in Fukushima, is we managed to reduce gamma rays, not alpha or beta, which is a matter state. I have developed now a technology and material structure which has been sent to the people who are responsible to test it, that these materials will change the condition and the position of even alpha and beta to a condition of normality. This data you watched in Fukushima, where the radiation reduced and became low, and some people wrote to me, you don't understand between this and in kilogram, you're stupid, blah, blah. We know exactly what we released and how we released the information, and the scientists who work in that level understood. From that data, it became very clear that GaNs materials only affect the radiation in the magnetic field spectrum, which is a gamma rays on that side. But when it comes to helium nuclei or whatever you call it, beta, alpha, whatever we put name to it, they have to be changed in a level different way that the materials can do. And that material, it took me a couple of months. It was built, it was made, and it's gone to 2 nuclear centers for testing. And surely it will change the position, and we will see the data. So the whole thing is working in a way we expect, and it'll be done the same way, and the teaching of it will go the same way. But the materials created, going from the GaNs to the nano layers to everything else, now you have to start understanding a new total science. And this total new science is very simple. For the first time, man has managed to change matter into a plasma, and at the same time has managed to take from the plasma and hold it the way he wants. If you don't understand the process, it's very simple. You put copper oxide or copper into caustic. You change it from molecular attachment to atomic nanolayer attachment. Instead of being matter connected, boundary at the same level with the high temperature and pressure. By making it to a nano, you made it magnetic field connection instead of physical boundary and connection. Now through salt, you made it to a GANS. Now what you do, you put a material detachment, which is a GANS, which is a nano layering with the magnetic field, the spectrum inside it, holding the GANS, which is a magnetic field plasma. And then these magnetic field plasma, which is in a GANS state in the new reactors, themselves create a magnetic field to keep separate themselves create a black hole, what you call principal matter, in the center of your reactor. And now you come back a full circle to the point of the creation. So your center residual, by what Stephen Hawking through his stupidity said black holes absorb all the energies, all the whatever, and they leak nothing. Now through this nano layering, putting a GANS, and then these gases all create their own strong gravitational magnetic field. You create a center point in your reactor, which is very much like a, what you call principal matter area, principal plasma area. And in that point, you share the fields between all the environments within that core. So now you don't need physicality of the matter to hold on to the plasma and move within the space of the universe. This is what the knowledge has done. You, as knowledge seekers, they never understood. And you, as people who follow this Keshe Foundation, you are looking for matter. Now, for the first time, you understand. The same as you created magnetic field gap between the atoms in the nano layer, now you create the same magnetic field gap between the layers of the GANS, because now it's a plasma. And then this center part between the sphere, which is just a ring inside the ring, in the center carries the same field strength, more or less, of the principal energy, principal matter magnetic field. So you created the confinement. Then now you try to squeeze and open this plasma in the center of your reactor. Then you understand that travel in the space becomes irrelevant of time and the space. But you got to understand the process. You got to understand where the technology takes you in other directions. For the first time, as a system, we have put a system out this week, about 2 days ago, where we have created possible up maybe 6 million combination of amino acids to be produced in one system to cover any need of the man for amino acid reproduction for a neurosystem or for reproduction of cells. What this means is that the knowledge is knowledge for humanity can be released, that we can produce through a specific organization neurons in the body or fibers in the body as is needed. So the development of what we call the health programs and the production programs has moved from the GANS condition into another level in another direction. So now you can produce different type of amino acid using the technology according to what the body needs. If the results are correct, which we hope it is, it looks to be a hope, then we release it. Doesn't matter irrespective of who tells us what you're doing. We don't enter health. We are there to support. There's been a meeting at the end of May in EU, the commissions, that they have put into question why alternative technologies cannot be used because the present pharmaceutical is not answering the problem, and there are more diseases in Europe and in the Western world than ever been before. So new technologies have a room to show what they are doing. And through that, through our connections and people who listen to this program, they know who they are. A new structure for health program of the Keshe Foundation has been set up. And hopefully, if everything goes through together, we already some agreements has been reached, then we will open a health center officially that people can go or connect through that health center to the worldwide operation setup. The final stages, everything has been agreed. I received the documents which has been done And I thank you. You know who you are. You've been working so hard to achieve this, and I congratulate you. The process is we are staying silent, not of the fear, but that people can understand more and more of the technology. There is a position in respect to, I've been asked to clarify, or I've been told to clarify about the 16th in Rome. We're trying to make a line for the delivery of the message to the His Holiness the Pope. We have not been given the access up to now. They know why we are going, but we'll meet whoever attends. I'll be there, and a number of people will be there. We will deliver the paper to the office of the Pope. We can do it through our own connections within the Vatican, but this time I decided it has to be done because there is a specific purpose for this. With this goes, with this letter which we shared with you last time, goes an invitation to world religious leaders. As you've seen on the front page of the Keshe Foundation in the past few days, that all the world religious leaders are invited to attend a meeting on the 30th of this month in Italy, irrespective of the position, for discussion into one thing: unification of the religions in achieving world peace. It's a very strange thing. If you ever know or understand what is G20 and G8 are, in the past few years, in parallel with every meeting of the G2 or G8 or G20, the religious leaders of the nations who participated in these G8 or G20s have met at the same time or just before. It's known as a religious G8, G20 meeting. And they are supposed to meet. I've never heard of some of them ever attending, but they issue a protocol to the G8 leaders what they expect as religious. And funny enough, if you go in one of the 2012 communications, in one of the paragraphs, they sit, it's very interesting. It's the third paragraph, the 2012 Religious Leaders' Statement of G8 and G20 Summit. It says, we have come together in Washington, D.C. on the eve of the 38th G8 Summit, set to meet in Camp David, Maryland, USA. Members of the Baha'i, Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Jain, Jewish, Muslim, Shia, Sikh, and Zoroastrian community have joined here to continue the work that has been done by religious leaders of the previous G8 summits. Religious leaders have, over the past 7 years, met to reflect on global agenda before leaders of the world's most powerful nations, and to offer their insight and hope for the encounters. Our religious traditions are informed by deeply held and widely shared value of work for freedom, justice, and human rights. And it says, as religious leaders from various traditions across the world, we affirm a need for G8 and G20 to radically transform the economical systems and assumptions that have brought us alarming level of economic inequalities and instability. 2, essential need to shift priorities of the G8 and G8 nations to comprehensively advance human security, health, and common goods. Third one, it says the role of G8 and G20 have to play in re-evaluating the border structure that have brought us to vast inequalities between the rich and the poor, as focus on economic injustices and in consequence political instability that arises from the gap between the two in many places in the world. And then it goes on the economic justice, and then it goes on the food, health, and human security. They want the balance and justice for all. And it goes on. You can read it, 6-7 pages of it. The only thing that none of these religious leaders in all their meetings have ever discussed in how they want equality in wealth and near enough, but now it's time to bring equality between all the religions. And this is the purpose of this meeting on the 16th. to call upon the world religious leaders to become one, not just by talk or to advise everything else, and except when it comes to their unification. When we unify the world religions, 99% of the humanity problems, the way we see it, will be solved. And this is the purpose of this presentation and request for the meeting. And you will understand, if the religious leaders, be it the Pope, His Holiness Pope Francis, or being it His Holiness Ayatollah Khamenei, or the others which have, you've seen their pictures on our front of the website. Now, it's not good just telling others what to do to be equal. Now it's time that for you to make the move to make it equal. And it's in your hand. And that's the purpose of delivering this letter on the 16th. They advise, they want justice and equality and reducing the borders to become one. Now, why don't we do that with the religions, and then we'll have no more problem. As you know, a lot of you know, before I became a full-time scientist, I was a full-time international businessman. I went through the borders of the East and West being broken down in late 80s, 90s. And one thing which surprised me, and it's been, I've spoken with a lot of world politicians and leaders of different sections when I talk, and that is the European EU. You can travel from Portugal to the more or less Russian border with no cross-border check, with no armies, with no military. How come through the concerted effort of the Pope in Vatican, previous popes in Vatican, such a unification of what they call Christian community in Europe was achieved? Now, with the reason we're going to Vatican, that we're asking for the support of the Pope for the unification of the whole world the same way. And that will come. They've been advising, as it says, in past 7 years, all the world leaders in economical and social structure. But they don't see that the whole of the social structure and economical difference is fine. It's literally fed through the religion. So if we make all the religions want to work in one target, we don't need any national borders. We don't need any, as they said in their letters, we don't need any armies. The money is spent, which has become what they call it became a term in mid-1990s, as the European countries closed their military bases because there was no more East and West, there was no more phantom nation of Eastern Bloc to fight for. They called it a peace dividend. The peace dividend was that armies of tens of thousands in each country became a few thousand, and now most of the countries have part-time soldiers, just in case, and that just in case will never come. Most of the time we see these armies are used in Africa and other war zones under the banner of United Nations. Why don't we send this through the unification of the religions throughout the world? And this is the purpose of this letter on the 16th. And I just make something very, very clear. I know a lot of these talks get transcribed and a lot of listened by a lot of world leaders. If the world religious leaders do not come to agree on this very soon, the way we released the key which we gave to the government to start the share of knowledge, we will release such a knowledge that religions become irrelevant. And this will be in a matter of very short time. The position is very clear. We don't, the handing over of the letter to the office of the Pope, if they accept it or not, is just, again, the habit of man and physicality. We have moved the souls and we'll achieve what we planned. We have to show we've been there or we go there. But in fact, we have put everything in motion that if need be, we put an end to name of God in different religions on this planet, that all become one. As I've said, the invitation letter has gone out this morning. It's getting done by our webmasters in Tehran in a beautiful form. And it reads, as part of this invitation letter, on behalf of the humanity, please accept this formal letter of invitation to request the honor of your presence at the meeting of all men's world religious leaders as men of God to attend this meeting in their clothes of the man and not as in their path of belief robes for unification of the religions of the world. We deliver this. It'll be hand delivered, it'll be delivered in different forms to all the world religious leaders for the 30th meeting. They attend or they don't attend, we do our job. As I explained to the knowledge seekers, when you run a reactor on the floor, you don't look at the physicality of the outside. Inside it there is a plasma, and as you've seen, the plasma within the structure affects one in one side, the other two detectors. So if those who sit in the holy places and they think they become untouchable because of their physicality, we have already reached your souls. We created the soul, so we have reached it. The same as we can change the behavior that you've been discussing this morning with other knowledge seekers in respect to how you change a small gas and you see the change in other reactor, the same thing has happened to your souls. The choice is yours, not ours. The choice is the change in what it's been set up to do. So this answers what's going to happen on Monday. We'll be there, I'll be there, and the handing over, accepted or not, even if you have to put it on the floor of Vatican and walk away, it means it's been received. That's the purpose, because the people at this level have to be reached through the appropriate ways. I explained this to the knowledge seekers, one of knowledge seekers, a couple of them recently. This is very simple. The people who stay and head the houses of God are the leaders of the worship houses, whatever name you put on them. People do not go to the house of worships, be it the church, be it the mosque, be it the temple, to church for the priest. They go there to share their souls with the one who they accepted the responsibility for their soul, be it Christ, being Muhammad, be it Zoroastrians. So when we deliver the message on 16th to Vatican, and the invitation which goes to all the world religious leaders, which is now getting done by the Keshe Foundation team in Tehran very rapidly. I hope they'll have it ready. It's nicely been told. It'll be very nicely set to fit the position of such a man. It's just a symbolic. This is one of the reasons I was explaining to my wife. Says, have you heard about this priest in England who says he didn't know raping a child was a crime? If you go on Facebook, you can read about it apparently. So if the man still sticks to his own, using the house of God for his own end, so we have to change the end, which means it has to become one. Then everybody knows raping a child is a criminal offense. The same as that's now what is discussed in the church in England with this. Apparently he's an archbishop, is a very high-ranking priest giving evidence in the court. Then he explains, if the highest priest in the country does not know that raping a child is an offense, then God help the King of Belgium. No wonder he's up to all these no-goods. Because he's been advised by the wrong people. So the Monday's meeting in Rome, you can attend, but what you bring is your soul, not your physicality.
Mr.
You don't
Keshe,
need to be in Rome.
Yes,
Yes?
could you talk about what people can do who can't attend at Rome, and what they might be able to do from their own home country or their home city as a way of supporting this event?
It's not supporting. You're supporting yourselves and humanity. You're supporting your ways. Make a copy and give a copy to the priest, to mullahs, to anybody who you pray or go on your worship to. Send a copy to all the world religious leaders and to the old world governments. We will post this invitation within the next few hours, most probably once our webmasters in Tehran confirm it's been put in order. So It means by the time we get to Vatican most probably, as we've seen with the Belgian police, how our Chinese colleagues bombarded the whole thing, that they sent a letter to other police forces trying to find out how come they're receiving so much email from China. What's happening in China? This is the word they said to the guy when they asked him a question. So all you do, just send all these emails as fax or emails. Yes, Mr. Cho knows what's happening. The Chinese community, Keshe Foundation, are one of the very strong, solid supporters. And the way what they did, they literally rocked the whole foundation of police organization in Belgium.
I think that's kind
Mr. Cho knows.
it's kind of funny and ironic.
I can tell you, yes, but I can tell you something very interesting. I have to say this because he's a very hardworking gentleman for the foundation. Emmanuel in Malta was questioned about this. They wanted to know what's happening in China. In Malta, police wanted to know what's happening in China. This is how the power of the foundation has found its ways. So this is what you got to do. You do it for yourselves, not for us. We are just a tangibility for a few hours on this planet. The whole change has come in the biggest problem with the Keshe Foundation is, as I always say, till people clicks on them, is that we are not Greenpeace to fight, or another peace organization, or another religious names under. We have brought a technology which forces peace. And the beauty of it is, I've said this to the knowledge seekers before, and they have not even understood it. To them, it's just a wind going through their ears. What has happened here in past 2-3 months has shown that the knowledge can be shared and given to man, irrespective of color, religion, race, anywhere in the world, without any money be paid across the table. There is no need for patent, but if you produce a system that some can share, you can benefit by it. But because everybody else can do it, you cannot charge, thousands of euros for a few dollars. And this is the whole change which is coming. So on Monday we meet in the center of Vatican by the needle, what I call the needle.
The obelisk, it's called technically, I think.
Obelisk, yeah. It's been put there it's been moved to the center. There was a reason moved to the center, and there's a light on the top of it. And that is to show the new light for the humanity. So we meet there, whoever is there. At least I know there are 2 people. There is me and my wife, and whoever is going to be there. The numbers will enforce the belief in world peace, in the peace through religions. And then we'll see what the next be. So if you are in your country, in a way through praise, or send your soul to the world leaders, that they receive it, that they become rich enough that they don't need to be enriched, and through that they'll see the channels and the ways of peace. Give the letter, because most of these priests are physical. They have something to read, to report back to their popes or to archbishop or to the imams and the head imams, that they understand the time of change has come. If they don't do it, this time we do it, because, it's a very funny situation. The situation is, you put a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian, a Buddhist, all in one room, which are very religious people, and you'll find out each one of them will pray in different time to the same thing, but they still call themselves different religion. None of them is said to kill the other one, and no one is going to poison the other one. The poisoning comes when you build a structure, you call it whatever temple, because the structure needs money to be held, to be kept, so it brings in the crookedness. The temple of God is in the soul of the man, not in his heart or in his brain. And this is what the man has to understand. Then in time, there are no religions in the space. Money, religion, and attachment to physicality is one of the bad habits of physicality, and Earth is one of those physical points. So when you meet yes?
Just so we can be completely clear, you would value the supporters of the Keshe Foundation to take the paper of In My Name and the other latest paper to their religious people in their communities. Can I say that?
This is what we'll be doing. This is what we'll be doing in Vatican. The message is
right.
clear.
So
Every
we
one
can
of
do it
you is a
locally
Messiah.
as well then.
Of course, this is the whole thing, because then they has to go up. But the meeting is set up for the 30th. It'll be done at the Keshe Foundation headquarters here. On the 26th, we will receive a guru, a high-ranking, what we call religious priest from India. And on the 30th, to follow up, whoever turns up, nobody will turn up. We know for a fact nobody will be here. But we are ready for it. The same as we were when we gave the keys. They come and ask for the key, but this is the whole setup. We are ready to receive. We have set the scene for the motion, because why we chose the Keshe Foundation Center. First of all, the environment of the Keshe Foundation Center is set for receiving what you call prestigious high officials. Secondly, this is a position, as I said before, we sit around this table as Christian, Muslim, Catholic, whatever name we choose to call ourselves, in the same path. So we have the facility, and as is in the invitation, they have to inform us who and how many we comes. We can accommodate easily within the train of the center up to about 5,000 people. They can come with all their followers. The building and the building's set, so we can accommodate easily 400 or 500 people. So we are not short of a space and time, but we don't need to go out and look for somewhere. The whole process can be done here. We won't change anything, because these people have to learn they're equal to the others when it comes to share their souls, because souls don't wear what do you call it, a turbine or a hat or whatever you want to call it, and a robe. When the world religious leaders realize it's their soul which makes the difference, and that's why a lot of them go astray, is because they misjudge the way people come to pray in their places of worship as worshipping to his soul, to what do you call it, to bless his soul, for example, Christ, or bless his name, Muhammad. They misplace that name and a place to themselves than to the God, because they realize that in reality, there is no connection between them and the Christ, or Muhammad, or any other prophet. And this misplacement becomes that they see themselves as one, so they think just because people come to the house of worship, they come and are important because they stand there. They are nothing. People don't look at the priest, they look at the soul of the man who they made a contract in their souls with. And this is where the whole religious leaders have misplaced their names and their trust of the people. They lost it. So you don't go to the church to pray for the priest. You go to church to share your soul with the Christ. This is the one you made contract with. The same as the reactor in the center of the system. Is this connection and is sharing his field is with the center core and the other two, not with a reactor which is run in another galaxy by another reactor by the spaceship. So this is where the misjudgment and misunderstanding of the priest has come, or religious leaders have come. They don't understand people go to the house of God or to any temple to pray and share their soul with their whatever they want to call. And then when they realize that all of the souls of the prophets are the same, then what's the difference? Christians go to the what you call Muslims, and the Muslims to the Jews and the rest. I learned this very early stage of my life. As you know, I'm half Jewish and half Muslim. I come from that kind of background. And the funny enough is, when our family, the Jewish family, come to England to stay with us, and we couldn't find Jewish kosher meat, they say, we only eat halal. We had to go to the Muslim shops to buy halal meat because it's the same. How come the food of the man can be the same, but not the same God?
Mr. Kesh?
They know it, but this difference has made it to make money. Who's wearing a more gold line on the turbines, and how many more accounts are kept. So on Monday we meet in Rome at 11 o'clock by the needle. I hope this will be a needle of peace than anything else. But irrespective if they accept our letter or not, the letter will be left on the floor. Somebody will pick it up because the soul will do its job. As you know, I repeat it again, 21st of April, 2 years ago, after the meeting of the world ambassadors at the Keshe Foundation in the center, within 24 hours, His Excellency President Obama started a procedure for people who give information to Iran and the rest of it, and it was mainly targeted towards Keshe Foundation because of the transfer of technology to Iran, which they refused to accept. I did not fight with him. I did not go out and attacking. I just wrote a letter. How come the president of a nation has become, what do you call it, judging that what technology can go to where or whatever. And you saw it less than 8 months later, on the day of his inauguration as a president, received a communication that they would like to receive the technology on the USB stick. So we prayed for the soul of the presidents. The priests who are more closely, who are really priests and close to the soul of the prophets, they are much easier game to play with because they understand the consequences of it. They don't need to go in G8's meetings as the world religious leaders to advise everything else except their own boundary. Now the boundary of the religions has opened up. If you want, as it says in this letter, they want equality, near equality for economical between them. And what they say, we have brought us to vast inequalities between the rich and the poor. So this has become the same. If you understand the inequalities between rich and the poor, it should be much easier to understand inequalities between how you develop these inequalities just by the name of somebody who you like to attach yourself to. So on the 16th we will be in Rome. There's a huge concern about my security. It's been mentioned, but that's with the Italian government what they do. But that is the physical position is irrelevant. Wherever you are, leave it on the street in front of the mosque, or give it to the man of God in any shape which is crossing, or give it to a monk. It will be the same. But at the same time, don't give them the letter. Letter is just physical. Give your soul with the letter. You see, it will reach before the guy even reaches to accept it.
Mr. Kesh, Elia wants you to know that there's a Bulgarian event that's supporting the Keshe Foundation Vatican situation. They're organizing an event in Sofia, and at the National Theater Fountains, apparently. They'll hold a procession in support of the coming desired peace and so on. So she just wanted you to know.
Thank you very much. But it's got to be done according to all levels. But there is something which I go one step further. When we hand over or we send the invitation to the world religious leaders, as there is a hierarchy, the souls of their priests and they follow them receives the same. So it's not exclusive. This is the channel we'll use. We'll take the humanity to a new level of understanding of the operation, of how things are done. This is the same as I said before. This brought a lot of pain to a lot of people, but the truth sits in the same as it is. As we say, they call it. It's in this. If you read this 2009 religious letters, it speaks about the spring uprising in the Middle East. I'm ashamed to read this, even it's written by the religious leaders. This spring uprising brought a lot of death for a lot of fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. A lot of bullets were used supposedly by the Muslims against themselves, against their regimes, or whatever excuses. Strange enough, as I said before, the payment of the penalty for this will be paid in the houses, in the homes of the directors, the manufacturers, and the developers of these guns and bullets in the Western nations who produced them, and even the scientist who designed it. Whoever designed the latest rocket or the latest gas mask to kill as much as he could or whatever they could do, the scientist who designed it, his soul has to pay for the death of the man on the street of the spring uprising. This is how much it shows that the religious leaders have not even understood. As I said, the man is killed by Muslim in the streets of Cairo in the spring uprising. But the payment goes through the same religious belief, and the people who done it, the manufacturers in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, and the prophet which sits with the Rothschild family, who instigates wars, has to pay for it. And if they thought they got away with it, the payment day is now. Whoever finances war, doesn't matter under what name, gets the same share of the punishment or loss of his own soul, according to the people. So the guy who financed all the bombs, all the bullets, I would like to see how his son, daughter, and his family live in about 2 or 10 years' time. This is what I wrote a letter, if you remember, was used to be on the forum. This is called the blood money of the education and the blood money of the food. This is what has to change. If Western Europe could have a peace dividend, no bullets, no armies, how come the armies and guns are sold to the rest of the nations to defend themselves? Why can't the religious leaders put an end to it and it's done? Why one nation has to be used as a scapegoat or as a a stick for the others to buy as many arms? As I said, I made a very direct objection to the travel of a couple of prime ministers on a special trips to somewhere just to sell arms and come back. What does this arm mean? They're sold, they have to be used, the wars have to be created. Who financed these arms to be made? That they don't buy the guns cash payments, It's paid by installments, somebody finances. And the one who makes the profit sits within any name of any family. You call them, you become fashionable, you call them Rothschilds, you call them Illuminatis, you call them the church or whatever. The man who makes the bullet wants the wage tonight to feed his child. And the man who uses the bullet can only pay in 20 years' time. Who finances it in between? The man eats in the house that he made the bullet. This is where the ethics of the soul comes in. And this is what we're going to emphasize. And we can deliver it. Slowly, the technology, with the science, we deliver it. This, as I said, we are not Greenpeace talking about it. We're delivering a technology and letting man on the street to understand. This is what I explained to knowledge seekers once or twice this week. We haven't brought the elite scientist here to run a reactor. Normal people, normal scientists, normal men of intelligence, and the rest of you around the world are doing the same thing. So it does not need to have a title. But we show that the normal man on the street can make enough food and set the system for himself to create energy and the rest. A lot of people are waiting for, as I said, the mobile phone for it to feed them. But they understand the battery in the mobile phone gives them the GANs, and the GANs gives them to be able to produce a dynamic reactor which can produce whatever they like. A lot of people touch the the fat. They don't understand the next step. So we have to speak the language of a child as it is. You can't tell about a space technology to a 2-month-old child in a cot. So we have to speak the language as you understand. Now you understand further, as I explained today. The thing is not to make the GANs stop, but now you understand the next step. The GANs itself, if it's used the right way, the right direction, now you understand you can make with it, you change the plasma into a field, and fields are packages. You can make whatever you like from it. So this is the process of the creation. So now we go to Rome. We put the letter on the floor of the Vatican if need be, but that's the problem between the people there and the others. And whoever attends, come with your soul. We carry the paper for physicality, or bring 1 or 2 copies to give to the others. That by seeing it, you transfer your hopes to their soul. Any questions?
Mr. Kesh? Hello?
Yes?
Yes,
I
my name
would
is
like to
Nicholas, and
finish
I do
this
have a question.
process. Yeah, I would like to finish the process today with no questions about the reactors, because we have done enough of it. As we're going to the 16th, if there's any question about the Rome or what we do for the World Peace Treaty, I'll be prepared to answer those.
Yes, I do have a question, sir.
Yes.
What is the spirit, and what's the difference between the spirit and the soul?
None.
So when we say spirit, what are we referring to?
It depends how you define what you want to understand. One is the path and one is the entity.
Okay, so the path is the spirit and the entity is the soul?
The soul.
How
Any
is
other
spirit, how
question?
is the, yes, how is the soul of man, is the soul of man a material matter as well?
Pardon?
Is the soul of man a material as well?
The soul is very much the same as what I said regarding the John's reactor. You break the body of the man, but the plasma inside it stays and performs. You see, if you translate it in a very simple way, when we put the reactor, we put a motor to it, we dictate its rotation and everything else. We decide how much gas we feed it and how much rotation and speed we put to it. That's a matter. But once the soul, the plasma is created inside it, as I said, you can smash the reactor. Then when it runs itself, it will only take what it needs to sustain in respect to its environment. It will not take any more, it will not give any less. This I showed in a very simple way to the knowledge seekers. I explained that to Marco a couple of days ago, or yesterday with John, with Armin. These two sat in front of the reactor, and I said to them, take what you need from the reactor. And both readings was stopped at 0.42222. And I said, now give what you like to the reactor. It went wherever he wanted. It went up, down, stayed up, and it came down. I wasn't interested to see how up they go. I was interested to see how much the reactor is prepared to give without damaging itself. And that was 0.04222. A system, a soul takes what you like in respect of the physicality, and it gives as much as it can give to sustain his own existence, but he will not steal. He can take and show huge numbers, but it only takes what is given. And this is the process of the soul. The physicality is irrelevant. These reactors, why do I keep on telling you from day one, when you build the reactor, when you feed the reactor, every time you feed the reactor, you create a new condition of existence. Pray for them. Give part of your soul to them. Then you understand the reason. Because very soon you will see even this elaborate system we create, because for man to understand has no meaning. Because
how does the man
there was
align his soul?
Pardon?
How does man align his soul with his physicality in order to?
A few people have reached that position. Few physical beings have ever reached that position. And even some who did achieve, they lost their track because they saw themselves as being the creator. And that's when the line disconnected. The same position as I said with the man who goes to the house of God to pray, doesn't go to pray for the priest, but the priest thinks he's God now because they come to the house. And this is a misconception. We had the same thing in Keshe Foundation 2 years ago. I called it a coup d'etat. I gave a talk and I wrote a paper about it. Few people came close to the foundation. They saw, oh, this guy can make millions and is not giving it away. What did they do? They made a page on the Keshe Foundation, which we realized later on by our enemies of the foundation, the way they helped us, that the Keshe Foundation will return all the deposits for the medical systems if you want to ask. And then they said, oh, we will accommodate their gender in a hidden email which was going across each other, which we had access through declarations. By accident, he just called me and said, what's going on here? They want to share all the benefits they earn from they thought being close to the foundation and the way we work, now they became the owners of the foundation and they were going to kick me out and run everything themselves. They know who they are. So it's normal. The people, when they come close and see something, they want to be in charge of and control it. And it's the same misconception with the priests. And whatever name you call to them. Priest to me is the man who guides the man in any name of any religion. So this is a misconception. So these people get, they don't see that the worship is to the Creator, not to the man who stands there with the elaborate colors of clothing. This is what you understand when you close. This physical body has no connection. And if it's hard to understand, if you got one reactor, make a second one and see how it behaves to the other one. Any other question?
Yes, when the knowledge seeker try to give or take something from the reactor, what are they giving and what are they taking? And if it's love, if it's their soul.
Just the fields. If I need to absorb to stay, I absorb. If I receive too much, I reject. But I found the balance. It's the process of, you see when you're in the soul, when you look at the reactors, one is steel, one is plastic, one is ceramic, one is copper, one is steel. But at the end of the day, we have created a plasma. We don't call it the plasma of the steel or plasma of the plastic, because that plasma, it's the soul. And this is what the man don't understand. The physical appearance has no relationship to what is created as the soul of the man or any creation. And it takes what it needs and it gives what it needs. You can't distinguish it. It doesn't go, I don't say the plasma in the reactor of the white one, which Armand runs it, is different than the reactor of the other one. Because internally it's all plasma, it's unit, is one, and that's the beauty of God. Next question. I think we had enough. It's about 11:30. I wish you all the best and all the lucks. Whatever you do, pray for the world religious leaders this time, that their soul reaches their own physicality, as we did with His Excellency President Obama. We need that. We know no religious leader will attend the 30th, but the soul will move and will achieve what we achieved, the same as what we share. We gave the keys to the world governments, they hid it, and then now we give it to the man. Everybody is producing reactors somewhere, somehow, and now we show you more and more than all of you produce reactors.
I think that's a great twist to have people pray for the souls of the top religious leaders of the world. That's a great twist on things.
Because even if you pray for the priest in the corner of your street, his soul is connected to the Christ, and through him you reach the top priest. Don't worry.
Right.
This is what you gotta understand. When you let me explain something, and I'll let you answer the question. When you pray, you give part of your souls to the man. You channel yourself to the Creator. In a way, you open a deposit bank for your soul. And then when you're in time of trouble, you go to the house of worship of whatever name, every once a week or whatever, and you pray to whatever, whoever you believe in. This is a little bank you open, you put some of the fields there. And then in time of trouble, you go back to the same house. God, my child is sick, or I have no money. You come out of the church, your child is better, or you find a lump of money on the table, or some business comes out, you get better. In a way, it's not the God who answered you. It's what you invested yourself in yourself that is come back to you. And through it, to the soul of the man who has no need, is exactly like the reactor. You sit in front of it, it only takes 0.422. This is the beauty. Once a man understands this, then walks away from all this path. Carry on. What's your question, please?
In the letter you mentioned that if men don't stop fighting or killing each other, then, or the one who does that, God or the soul will be distanced from him, or the soul will stay away from that person. What does that mean?
The payment, there is no punishment. When you don't receive, is punishment enough? If I can give you an example, you tell your child, if you are naughty, you have no ice cream. Even the ice cream is in the fridge or in the freezer. It's not that you're going to destroy or punish or beat the child. It's just that ice cream is there when you are ready to enjoy the pleasure of it. That's all you do. You do not receive what is there for you to receive till you are ready to receive it in that level. There is no punishment, there is no hell, or there is no heaven as man is made to be frightened of. You make that receiving or not being elevated to that position. This is the problem we have in the cores in the reactors now. We cannot elevate them all to be the same that they can move together. Until they don't unify, they will have problem in loading it till they find a way to unify. Because the soul of the people in the lab is not the same, is not become one. Because when it becomes one, the system will go. This is what I explained. I put a ball on the table on the top, but nobody has understood it. It's not the unification of the fields, it's what you put in there to be united. The operators of the reactors, operators of these systems don't understand one thing. It's not just the plasma in the reactor. Your soul is part of it. When you're pulling it the other way because you want to be better than the other one, that your reactor goes up first, nothing happens. How can you fly when you tie the plane to the ground and put a couple of chains to it? The chain is not physicality. The chain is the soul which you're holding it back. A lot of you running reactors in the hope of seeing it, but you don't. We run your reactors in the hope of being able to serve with this reactor that I can help this and that. As I say, you're still in a phase of not only physical schizophrenic, you're in a soul schizophrenic condition too. But once you start the boat, you sort the both out, then you see the development. We say
Thank
goodbye. Thank you for today, and wish you all the best for Monday, whoever you go and whoever you meet.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Kesh,
much.
and
Thank you, Mr. Kesh.
best wishes to you
Thank
too
you.
on that big day.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. And so ends the 14th Knowledge Seekers Workshop. Thanks to everybody on live stream and to everyone else on the Skype call, and thanks to Vince and others on the GoToMeeting.
They have
And
a better soul than us.
may all your souls come together. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.